Hi everyone, and welcome back to ChompCast. As always, I'm Jordan Rico. I'm Grace Peters.
I'm Adam Krasner.
And I'm Rafael.
Today we're joined by someone who has helped redefine an entirely new era of Florida basketball. He's the 2025-2026 SEC Head Coach of the Year, and of course the 2025 National Champion Head Coach, Todd Golden. Since arriving in Gainesville, Coach Golden has brought a modern approach to the game, an analytical system, a strong culture, and a standard that's just as much about the people as it is about the wins. We're excited to talk leadership, building a program in the spotlight, and what it takes to compete within the SEC and on a national stage. Coach Golden, thank you so much for being here today. Well, thank you so much, Coach Golden, for being here today. I'm really excited to talk with you.
Yeah, so we're getting to building a championship culture in a minute, but this week it's actually been very fun for the program. Last Wednesday, Alex Condon committed to coming back next year, and just this morning, Tommy Houck as well, coming back for his senior year. The first time since 2017, a lottery pick has chosen to come back and play for the program. So how have you built that culture to bring these guys back and continue competing for national championships?
Yeah, first of all, it's great to be here with you guys today. In regards to getting, Tommy and Kondo back specifically, I think, first of all, your culture starts with people in your program. We have a great staff. We've been able to have a lot of continuity. So there's a lot of comfort between our players and our staff, which is really important. There's real relationships there. And, for Tommy and Kondo, those guys are really unique. They were kind of undervalued high school recruits. Obviously, Tommy comes from Pennsylvania, Alex comes from Australia. They really wanted to be here in Florida. They really valued the student athlete experience that they could get, both great students. So they spent a lot of time just valuing the educational piece for them. And, now in this day with rev share and NIL, they have an opportunity to make a little money along with their books and their playing career. So unique time, and we were able to take advantage of it and get two incredible players and people back in our program.
Well, great. And so speaking of that culture, what is one non-negotiable piece of culture that you instill in the players from day one?
It starts in the recruiting process. We try to be really, really transparent on what our expectations are for guys when they come here. And we keep it simple. We say we want guys to have a great attitude, guys that have a great work ethic, most importantly, guys that want to be here at the University of Florida.
Yeah.
And, those are kind of that quick benchmark that you have to hit to make it to that next round of being recruited by us, I guess you could say.
Right.
But we have a lot of those transparent conversations on the front end. So when we get to coaching them and kind of giving them constructive criticism in practice or whatever it may be, that they understand that that's going to be part of their experience here.
All of that, we want to transfer a little bit into your style as a coach and your development. So how has your time from San Francisco kind of changed your coaching style now that you're an SEC coach? And how do you continue to see that evolve in yourself personally and going into your future?
Well, the great thing for me personally and our staff is when we got this opportunity in Florida, we felt like we could do a lot of the same things that we did at San Francisco, but just at a much higher level and a much bigger scale. We had a great foundation at USF. We had a really good, program, a team that made it into a tournament for the first time in 30 years. But Florida obviously is one of the best places in America to run a men's basketball program or any program for that matter. And we felt like we'd be able to attract incredibly talented young men, again, because of the academic profile of the school and the championship level of athletics that we compete at. And, I don't feel like I've had to change all that much. I feel like I'm a player's coach, so to speak, just trying to get great guys in a program that want to be a part of something bigger than themselves and just hire a really talented staff where I can delegate properly and give those guys a lot of ownership of the program as well. And it worked for us in San Francisco, and knock on wood, it's working for us here in Florida as well.
And this is definitely a program to celebrate, obviously, with the 2025 Natty, along with the 25-26 season Coach of the Year. How did that affect you? What did that look like? And did you enjoy your time, at the Natty? And what did the preparation look like for that?
Well, our run, in 25 was really kind of an encapsulation of our vision when we got the job. You always have a plan when you get these opportunities, but a lot of times, when you have a plan, you get punched in the face and you got to figure out a new plan, but for us, we're able to incrementally execute and we had a rough first year. We were one game under 500, but we were kind of laying the foundation of what we wanted our program to be. And then we brought in an incredible recruiting class. We look back on that class. We had freshmen like Tommy, Alex Condon, right? That were part of that. We had transfers like Walter Clayton, Micah Hanlockton, Zion Pullen, Tyrese Samuel. It was it was a class that, will go down as one of the best of all time, probably. And so that gave us a huge lift, going into year 2, and we started winning a lot of games and getting confident. But it wasn't until year 3, and kind of having that continuity in the program with Will Richard and Walter Clayton and our young guys getting that more of that experience that allowed us to have that special, third season where we went 36-4 and won a national championship. And then what I'm really proud of is the way we've been able to just continue. We lost a lot. Those 3 players went to the NBA. Walter, Will, and Elijah were all great players. Yeah. And we miss them dearly. But for us to get another 1 seed in the NCAA tournament this year just speaks to the continued success, of our staff, and then getting players to step up and getting our returning players to step into new roles and be able to take that on, and have great success that way. So hopefully going into next year, we have some more of this continuity that's been good to us, and hopefully it'll continue that trend going into next season.
Yeah, so each year the team has to kind of find a new identity, figure out who they are. Was there ever a moment in these successful teams that you knew, all right, we found something now and let's get rolling for the rest of the season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in year 3, when we won the national championship, we felt early on that we had a really good thing going. It was just one of those situations where everybody had a role, and everybody was really confident and comfortable in that role. And, sometimes it just clicks. Whereas last year, early on in the year, it took us a lot longer to figure that out. And we knew we had great talent. We knew we had really good guys in our program. But it wasn't as comfortable. Our transfers took a little longer to, to find the rhythm. And it wasn't until the middle of the year that we really were like, okay, wow, this team has a chance to have a special season in their own right. So every year it kind of happens at a different time, and it takes, some different guys to click. But with the continuity that we have going into next year, my hope is that it will happen really similar to year 3.
I know it must be hard to pick just one, but do you have a story, a memory, or a moment that you think back to that really defined your coaching time here so far on the Gators, or something that you just maybe a favorite memory that you have?
A couple, for sure. I think one of the kind of early moments that allowed us to feel like we were on the right track was our second year when we won on the road in overtime at Kentucky. They had beaten us with our first game of conference play, and we were really disappointed because we felt like we had a team that could win that game. And so going on the road and winning at Rupp was a huge kind of moment for us to take a big jump moving forward. And then in year 3, when we won that 60 tournament, I thought that was a moment where we're like, all right, we kind of arrived, and now we have an opportunity to take it to the next level. And then 6 games later, we were raising a national championship trophy. And so that, kind of run towards the end of year 3 was really, really special. And, getting a 1 seed again last year was a huge milestone for us. Even though the season didn't end the way we wanted to in the NCAA tournament, that was the first time in Florida program history that we were able to achieve back-to-back 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So those would kind of be the highlights, where I kind of sit back and pinch myself a little bit and I'm just really proud of what we've been able to accomplish to this point.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up question to that. I know that, of course, we don't see the countless hours that you all spend in this practicing facility, working with the team, the traveling, all of that, but we see what happens during the game. What is it like to be courtside on that, coaching a team through a really good part of the game, or maybe sometimes where we're down? What does that look like as a mindset of a coach to kind of balance the team out, continuously support them, but also maybe even shift around one game?
Yeah. In games, even though it might not look like it with my demeanor on the sidelines, I think it's really important to just keep a really level head, and the biggest key is that you need to be a great resource for your players and understanding that there's going to be some incredible highs in those games and some really tough lows that you have to navigate through. And, for me, my kind of coaching style is to be someone that they can bounce things off of. And obviously, when the train gets off the tracks a little bit, be able to recenter and get everybody back on the same page. And I'm fortunate to be working with some really talented student athletes that allow us to do that as well. But games are really why we do this. It's being a part of that competitive environment that drives us and that gets us up at 6 a.m. on the summers, to make sure we're training and to get us practicing every day. But the games are, the experiences that we all work towards.
It's clearly you're instrumental in facilitating the Gator spirit that we all know and love. So we'd love to hear kind of what's your YUF, and then also with that, when your time in Florida is said and done, what do you want players to say about the program that you facilitated?
Yeah, well, my YUF is pretty simple, to be honest. When 4 years ago at San Francisco, we had a really good run, and we knew we had some other head coaching opportunities. When Scott Strickland called, I told him, listen, if you're giving me an opportunity to be your head coach, I'll be there tomorrow. And it was because of the success that UF had when I was a student athlete in college back in the mid 2000s. They won back-to-back national championships. I always thought of it as being an incredible brand. The combination of the academic excellence with the athletic excellence, I feel like it's really easy to recruit to. And, it was just a place that I felt like we could be really, really successful. So that was a big part of why we jumped at this opportunity. And, in regards to what it looks like when we're not coaching here any longer, I hope that people will look back at our time as, a program that operated at a championship level, had great guys, both from a staffing perspective and a player's perspective that were great, ambassadors to the university on the floor. And people will look back at it as being a great time with championships and historic success.
As being a part of the Gator Nation, we all know, how pivotal your work is here at the university, for the Florida basketball team. We were kind of wondering, and focusing on your mindset specifically, how do you, make decisions throughout the games? How do you know you're making the right decisions? And when do you look back and say, oh, when do you reflect on things and maybe say, oh, I could have done this differently? Or, what does that process look like for you?
Really trying to be as analytical as possible when emotion can kind of knock you off track. I think is the best way to answer that. We try to be analytical in every part of our program, whether it's player evaluation, whether it's scheduling, recruiting, and games are no different. But there is a lot of emotion, and I think it's really important to be able to navigate through that, because if you're making emotional decisions, I can guarantee you're not going to make great decisions. And so trying to level that throughout the course of the game, and then being humble enough to be a good self-evaluator. We are far from perfect. I think there's a lot of decisions that we look back on and they're like, hey, maybe we wish we would have done that, as opposed to the decision we made in the heat of the moment. And not having too much pride to be a good self-evaluator, I think is really, really important, because if you get, these decisions right 80% of the time, you're probably doing pretty good. But making sure those other 20% of the times you don't make that same mistake. I think that's something that's really important. So those are kind of the main things that I focus on when coaching.
Yeah, a big theme of our podcast is mentorship. You've had some great mentors in the past, including Bruce Pearl. What are some of the things that you've learned from a mentor, and what lesson would you give on to the UF student body of how to operate at a championship level?
Yeah, well, I've had great mentors. As you said, Bruce, I played for him in 2009 on the Copy Games. Fast forward, worked with him at Auburn. And then I played for two great coaches, Randy Bennett, who was my college coach at St. Mary's, now head coach at Arizona State. Kyle Smith, who was an assistant coach, is now head coach at Stanford. So played for those guys for 5 years and got a really good foundation in my time in Moraga. And what my mentors taught me is there's more than one way to be successful. You will not find further differing coaching philosophies between Randy Bennett and Bruce Pearl. They're just really opposite, but they're both wildly successful. And Randy Bennett is a grinder, kind of hardworking, under the radar guy, and Bruce is obviously a gregarious personality that's always in the news, in the media, and both run their programs differently, but both wildly successful. So for me, I've always tried to be a blend of kind of both those guys while also being myself and kind of putting my own personal imprint on our program. And, using the lessons that I've learned from my time with them, anytime I feel it's applicable to our program here at Florida.
Yeah, and speaking of being successful, how do you define success?
It's a great question. Obviously, wins and losses are pretty important in our profession. But I also evaluate every part of our program. And using Tommy and Kondo as an example, when we have really talented guys that have the potential and the capacity to go play in the NBA right now, when they decide to come back and kind of put those dreams on pause for a year to finish their eligibility at the University of Florida, that means we're doing something right here, that they want to continue to come back and be a part of our program when there's great things in front of them. So, just having guys that want to be in our program consistently, having that retention piece, which, knock on wood, we're doing pretty well with right now. And, just trying to stay at the top level of the SEC, knowing that we have great programs like, Kentucky and Alabama and Tennessee kind of nipping at our heels. As long as we stay at the top and continue to recruit really talented guys that value the educational piece of English and Florida, I think we'll be pretty successful.
Yeah, and it shows. Every time we come back literally today is an amazing testament to that. What's next on the Florida Gators? What should we be expecting this season?
Well, again, we have a lot of guys coming back. So we'll have some great content, and I'll be disappointed if we don't have another remarkable season. To be honest, we will be picked preseason to be in the top 5 for sure. Potentially, top 3, maybe even top 1. If they value these guys the way I do. But all that doesn't do much for us past November 3rd when our first game is, and our guys, as well as our staff, has to realize that there's going to be a lot of pressure, that comes with those preseason expectations. But we have to view it as a privilege. And programs that don't have that pressure aren't going to be under the same microscope that we are. But again, that comes with the territory, and we're looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Coach Golden, for being here today. We really appreciate your time and your insights, and really excited for everything that's to come for men's Florida basketball.
Thank you very much. It's been great being with you guys today.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode.